seems like some sort of subliminal switch.
The playoffs are very different than the regular season.
The most uncomfortable thing ever.
If it could go right, it did go right.
If it wasn't for Lamar Hunt, Philip Anschutz, and Robert Kraft, this league would not be here.
Hey folks, what's going on? My name is Scott Schertzen. Joining me, as often the case, is Mr. Bill Akins, and welcome to Streampunk Soccer and Inside the Call. Today, we are talking to the San Jose Earthquakes with one of the most recognized names when it comes to Steel City sports in Mr. Ted Ramey. Sir, how the heck are you?
I'm doing very well, Scott. I appreciate you having me back on. I didn't scare you away when we spoke a year ago. And Bill, nice to be on with you as well. And
Yep, nice to be on with you.
Off to a very good start. So all is well in San Jose and the South Bay. So I think we're pretty excited right now.
Okay, so let's recap real quick what's happened so far through 7 games with the San Jose Earthquakes. Right now, you are tied for the league lead in wins and points, by the way, with 6 wins and 18 points, respectively. You are tied for the league fewest amount of goals allowed with just 2, 5 clean sheets right now, and honestly, a really, really exciting time to be a San Jose Earthquakes fan. So talk to me a little bit. How's it feeling over there right now? How are you feeling right now with this first fifth of the season?
It's been really fun just to watch the team kind of hit the ground running the way they did after a year in which they made a lot of progress in year 1 under Bruce Arena, but the defense still needed some work, and they were a very offense-heavy team last year, and everyone was kind of waiting to see what would happen from year 1 to year 2. Now, in the offseason, they lose their 3 biggest weapons on the offensive side of things, in Christian Espinosa, in Chicho Arango, and in Joseph Martinez. And everybody was kind of wondering, like, okay, they just lost their powerful offensive trio up top. And last year, the defense was an issue, giving up more than 60 goals. They didn't make a lot of moves on the defensive side. How is this going to work? And I guess that's what you get for questioning Bruce Arena, who seems to know a thing or two about having success in Major League Soccer. And the Earthquakes have been much more structured on defense. They have young players across that back line with Reed Roberts and Daniel Muni, and they've got Benji Kikanovic, a converted forward and winger, playing on the right wing back position. The left wing back was DeJuan Jones. He blew out his Achilles against Vancouver a few weeks ago, and since then they've seen Jamar Ricketts as well as Dave Romney play that left back position. So the structure that the team lacked a year ago has definitely improved in terms of its defense. And then up top, you've got a Preston Judd, you've got Useni Buddha, you've got Timo Werner, you've got Jack Skahan, you've got a number of players, Jamar Ricketts has played up there as well, who have really been good in allowing the Earthquakes to press and put the pressure on the opposition and force them into mistakes. And as you led with, that combination of speed specifically, I would say the Earthquakes are probably the fastest team in the league right now, but the combination of speed, of youth, and work rate have allowed the Earthquakes to put forth a really, really good start to the season. They sit, like you said, with 6 wins, only 1 loss up to this point. They've only allowed 2 goals. You know, the schedule hasn't exactly been brutal on them up to this point, but they've had good wins against a San Diego and a Vancouver. And even in the one game they lost against Seattle, they dominated the game, and it was one of those things where you walk away and you think, how did they not get at least a point out of that game? One of the more telling stats of that affair against Seattle was San Jose had 17 corner kicks. Seattle had none. And when you dominate chances that are creating all those corners, you think eventually by way of that pressure or by way of a corner, you're going to find the back of the net. You know, credit to Seattle. They're a phenomenal franchise, and they've been great ever since the minute they entered this league. But they were able to take advantage of their one opportunity to put San Jose on the board. San Jose was not able to do that, so that's their one loss. But you know, everything with San Jose right now has been going, quote unquote, according to plan. I know the schedule in the minds of many has not been, brutal up to this point, like I mentioned, but, you know, they've beaten Vancouver on the road. They beat San Diego, and, you know, now they're kind of looking to take these next couple of steps to see where they get going to. And, you know, even if Sporting Kansas City or Atlanta is not at the top of the table right now, I think you also have to tell yourself, like, okay, but they're still on the schedule, and we all know that if you don't beat the teams on the schedule, you know, it's not going to go very well, or at least get points out of these games. And, you know, that's what the Earthquakes have been able to do up to this point. So it's very exciting. Still a work in progress. I'm not, crowning this team by any means, but it's certainly fun to watch how much confidence they're playing with right now.
Sure. Bill?
So, Ted, You talk defense, and when you looked at the Quakes this year, I mean, it's been suffocating defense. I mean, that's been one of their key drivers to success. However, I look at the Bruce Arenas. He made a little bit of a tactical shift. He utilized a 3-back system in 2025, went to a 4-back formation in 2026. Me personally, I think that improved the communication, and it's really limited the opponent's scoring chances. What do you say?
I think that his plan when he came to San Jose was to play in that 4-back system, but the way that they were trying to line up, what they were trying to do, made him think that mostly last year they were going to play with the 3 center backs and the 2 wing backs, as I don't think that was his plan initially. If you'll recall, at the start of last year, even Christian Espinosa was part of that wingback system. And I think a lot of that was trying to figure out, how do we get Espinosa and Arango and Martinez on the field at the same time? And, that was part of the questions that he was asking. But you give up more than 60 goals the year after you give up a record number of goals in 2024. You have to figure things out. And actually, the last game of the year in which they beat Austin, they had to beat Austin and get some help elsewhere. They did play in a 4-man back line. But I think Bruce saw something last year in Daniel Muni, who is so far the fastest center back in the league this year. I think has the second fastest clock speed in all of the league right now. He took big steps forward last year, and Daniel Muni is a very, very talented athlete. The number 5 overall pick, Reed Roberts, who they acquired in a trade for a super draft pick with New England, he showed some flash last year. And I think Bruce said to himself, okay, if this guy can, kind of be part of that center back pairing, you get 2 young Americans back there, you've got a lot of, potential ability. With Benji Kikanovic on the right-hand side, he played some wing back before, and he had played at the right back just a little bit. So I think Bruce saw that Benji was willing to do whatever it took to play along that back line. But I think that when he looked at what he had and how he could create better structure, they needed to lock down the midfield a little bit more, and they've been able to be better this year with Vieira in his second year with San Jose. He's been a lot stronger. And I go back to a preseason game against Charlotte, and there was a play in transition to where as soon as it looked like they were going to flip the field on San Jose, Benji Kikanovic, one of the fastest guys out there, was already breaking back. And so he got back there, and I believe he was playing next to is either Romney or Muni, and they had an immediate idea of what they wanted to do to take advantage of the 2 men back there in a counterattack. Because last year it just turned into every man for himself, emergency defending 1v1 situations. But this year, when they've had to face the transition, they've been able to have numbers back already. And what's interesting about that is I don't see them as sitting back or anything like that. I just think they have a much more organized idea of the cues that will lead them to get back to face a counter. And they also have a much clearer system of cues when they are going to press. And Preston Judd, this is no knock on Joseph Martinez, but Judd is younger and faster. Mm-hmm. He's going to press. He's going to force them into the bad decisions when teams are trying to build out the back. And if you do that, sometimes you play a little more direct Route 1 soccer, play it long, and then you've got some athletic center backs in Muni and Reed that can go out there and break up the ball and take it away from the opposition. So, the broader picture, I think, of what I see here is that Bruce Arena, like all great coaches do, has been able to put guys in situations that will allow their individual abilities to flourish. And he's relying on that speed of Roberts and Kikanovic and Daniel Muni. And, on the left-hand side, it's been DeJuan Jones, who very talented. When he came over last year in the trade with Columbus, that's what sparked the Quakes to go on a run through June that put them into a playoff spot for a while. But he goes down, but they have depth at that left-back position. They've got Romney who can play it, Paul Marie, Vitor Costa, Jamar Ricketts, Useni Buddha. So, that's kind of been the area of emphasis. They've been much more responsible, taking advantage of the guys' skill sets, and then the work rate also goes into it as well. And again, I'm not trying to knock on anybody that was on the team before, because it was not Joseph Martinez's job to defend. It was not Chicho Arango's job to defend. And Christian Espinosa was very good at getting back up and down the field, but I think that would, take a toll on his ability to defend. And his job is to get assists. He's one of the great creators in Major League Soccer. And so I think he had to put his emphasis on the offensive side of things. But now just have younger, pacier, speedier guys with more balance left to right. And I think it just allows them to have that much more of a concentrated structure. which obviously is predicated on the personnel, especially up top, and that's the biggest change of a year ago.
Now one of the things that you mentioned, the fact that, they played Sporting KC twice already at this point. You mentioned Atlanta and even Philadelphia is in there. But not to be taken away, also, you had a match against both San Diego and also one against Vancouver. One of the things that's also worth mentioning, Bill and I've talked about this before, is just how strong, how strong teams are on the I-5. From San Diego north, with the exception of just a couple of teams there, it is a completely dominant West Coast there. And then when you move east, a little bit of changes. So the fact that you've been able to basically compete with this, despite the fact that you've had 2 tough matches already in that regard, you do have another one coming up against LAFC, Son, and Bouanga coming up. But there's a lot of confidence that you guys have right now. And I think for the fan base, a lot of relief.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, like I said, so many questions in the offseason. And, we haven't even talked about Timo Werner at this point, who has come in and he's had to deal with some little minor injuries, and he's been out of the lineup the last 2 games. Also, Daniel, the keeper, has done a really, really good job, of which I would say his ability to stop shots is a lot easier when the defense is more organized in front of him and he's put in a better position, because last year he was getting pulled all over the place left and right, and the year before as well when he was healthy. But I think that the Earthquakes' confidence stems a lot from the fact that these guys, a lot of them have been here for a bit. They all know each other very well. They know their playing tendencies. Nico made his debut as a 16-year-old back in 2022. Same thing with Oseni Buda out of Stanford. These guys, they've been together for a while. Benji Kikanovic has been here since 2021. Jack Skahan since 2020. Paul Marie since 2018. He's the most long-tenured player on this squad. And so I think when you combine that with, Preston Judd, who's in year 3 right now, and the guys that come in, young American center backs and Daniel Muni and Reed Roberts and such, is like the guys know each other. They know their tendencies. They know what their job is. There's not a lot of ego. And I think you can see that they're having fun in the game. And I was joking with Nico about this, and he didn't really want to go on it because he's a respectful athlete. But against San Diego, they broke San Diego's system. They forced them into mistakes. And I don't think San Diego, by the way, one of the hardest things to do in a broadcast that I've done 3 times now is saying San Diego versus San Jose, because usually, say like a St. Louis or, a Seattle, something like that. Even if it's an S, there's more distinction to where your brain doesn't have to change it at the end there. But you just saw them playing with such a fire, and they were, when they played San Diego a year ago, San Diego's been really good at playing out of the back under Mikey Veras. That's their tactics. That's what they do really, really well. But the Earthquakes would try to man mark everybody on the field and, just try to make sure everybody was covered. But this time when we played San Diego, it was if a guy was receiving a pass, suddenly there were 2 and 3 Earthquakes right up on him. And then when they passed, suddenly there were 2 and 3. And it's just that work rate, that overall aggression that they've been able to show, whether it's, playing against a team that's building out of the back with a press, whether it's been being physical with teams out there, being hard to play against, getting more into that blue collar identity that San Jose has long been known for. Things like that are really shining through with this team right now. And it doesn't hurt that you've had 4 appearances from Timo Werner. He's got a pair of assists already, both assisting goals to Oseni Buda. And you feel that he's going to get going. And once he starts adding to that attack, and he also, is a talented player who's going to be able to combine on the press as well. He'd help do it against Seattle in his 1 start. So I think there is the idea that they are creating a very strong foundation, and there's more to come. And it's breeding a lot of confidence.
Sure. Bill?
Ted, you talked a little bit about the youth. Under Bruce Arenas, you've seen a maturation process. I think, they've leaned heavily on homegrown talents and young players, and I think in year 2 they've taken a significant leap forward. I mean, you talked about Nico Sakaris, 20-year-old midfielder. He's become almost like the crucial link between defense and attack. I mean, you looked at what he did when he provided 2 assists against, the recent 3-1 win over Sporting Kansas City. Bo LaRue, another guy, 2025 player of the year. Many have called him the heartbeat of the midfield. He's got good vision, long range shooting threats. But what do you think about that? I mean, are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, but it's funny because when they hired Arena, a lot of the talk was, he's not going to play the kids. And it's like, well, actually, he's put Reed Roberts out there. He played Max Floriani last year. He's played Nick Fernandez. Bo LaRue, like you alluded to, Jamar Ricketts, who last year was only in his second year in Major League Soccer. And I think Bruce is very, very good at doing something that I wish we would see more from U.S. soccer and the men's national team. And I could have a longer discussion about how there's too much emphasis on tactics and wanting to outsmart our opponents as opposed to just using our best attributes, especially we're very good at developing athletes. And I know it's too easy to say we should just copy Morocco and be a counterattacking team and turn into that, but I'll save you my 45-minute conversation on that. But I do think Bruce has just looked at what he has in this team and says, okay, do we have the, super high skilled, athletes that are coming from other, soccer leagues? Are we buying these high priced players, Timo Werner notwithstanding? And I think he said to himself, no, but what I do have is a lot of speed, and we have a lot of desire and drive to outwork the opposition. And so I think that when you have youthful guys who can run for days and who are not backing down from any moments. I mean, last year he put Max Floriani and Reed Roberts, who are rookies, out there in big starts down the stretch when the Quakes were trying to qualify. Bo LaRue, he's out there for the majority of last year. I think he appeared in all 34 games and, or at least was close to it as, well, technically not a rookie because he was drafted in 2024, but didn't play until 2025. He was with Quakes too. So you talk about him, going to these young guys and just saying, you know what, they've got the drive, they've got the desire. I'm going to put them out there. And I think that, Bruce kind of surprised some people in that aspect because he had the perception of not playing the younger players, which is actually a bit of a misnomer. If you go back and you look at some of the other teams he's, played at, he's actually, or coached at, he's put young guys in. No clearer example than Dave Romney, who was in year number 1 in his career when he was with the Galaxy with Bruce Arena. And by the end of that year, he was up with Los Dos playing with the Galaxy consistently and a part of that back line. So Bruce knows how to put guys out there and get the most out of these young athletes. So I think that that's a big part of it. And Nico Chakiris, like you referenced, everyone wants the homegrown stars to be stars immediately. And they have this perception that they're going to suddenly take over the league. And when Nico got in the league at 16, I don't know, guys, what were you doing when you were 16? I was not a professional athlete. I was hanging out with my friends. We were going to try and figure out how we could get to the game.
Chasing girls, that's what I was doing.
Exactly. It's like you were not focused in on this life of living like a monk and being a professional athlete. And so Nico, it's taken time for him to quote unquote develop. But guys, he's only 20, to going on 21, and he's playing at a very high level finally. And I think last year you kind of finally saw that his body, his physicality caught up with his skill set. I think Bruce Arena was aware of that as well. And that's why he said going into this offseason, he said Nico Chakiris has a brilliant opportunity next year to be the guy in the midfield. And so we've seen him step up because Nico's body caught up with his mentals and his skills. And now he can protect the ball more when he's dribbling. He's faster. He finally last year, Joe Cannon, who I do the broadcast with, we looked at each other and we're like, hey, Nico's fast now. This was not part of his game. And he's not a burner, but he's got more speed than he did before. Lo and behold, it takes some guys to grow up and to grow into their bodies, especially in a league like Major League Soccer, which has so much speed and physicality. So now Nico's got the attributes to battle in there. And unshockingly, he's always had the skill. He just needed to, grow into more of a man as opposed to 16-year-old. And he's having success. And Jamar Ricketts, he's been having success, and all these guys, they've been given an opportunity, and not. I don't think there's ever been the sense that it's their job to lose per se, because it's never been that pressure packed. But Bruce has essentially been very honest with guys, and I talked about this recently. There was a player who shall remain nameless, but they were not in the 18 one day, and I went and talked to him before the game, and I was like, "Oh, what's up?" He's like, you know what? He's like, Bruce just doesn't. See me in the right form for what he's doing right now. But he said, but he's been very honest with me about that. It's nothing against my play. It's nothing against why work rate at practice or anything. He just says, this is not the game for me or the last stretch to be on the game day roster. And he was so okay with it. And a lot of times athletes will tell you one way or another if they're unhappy with not being in the roster. But it tells me that Bruce Arena is very good at communicating and telling guys where they actually stand and what their opportunities are and what their chances are. And so that's a huge part of this. You look at Jack Skane, who scored 2 goals in the last game. He only made like 5 appearances last year, didn't have any starts, had, I believe, 1 assist. And now this year he's got, a couple of starts to his name. He's got an assist. He's got a couple of goals. Bruce Arena sees guys who want it and sees who wants to play. And he's he's letting that happen. And I know that that's, not everybody always wants to see it that way. They want to see the complete picture from day one of what the roster is going to be. But Bruce is flexible enough to go from 1 week to the next, one segment of the season to the next, to understand how to best apply these players, whether they're veterans, whether they're young guys, whether they're guys, trying to make that transition. I think that's a big part of it.
Bill, do you have anything? I do have a couple more things in this case.
So do you think that you've heard this before probably, but the Bruce Arena 2-year effect,
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, historically, when he has a second full season in any of the clubs he's ever coached, it just results in a major performance surge. Do you buy into that, or is that something that's kind of been, I don't know, drummed up by the media?
I think, but the media are looking at what he's done in year number 2 with other teams, of which you have to notice they've taken a big jump. And so from that regard, you can't ignore it. But I think what Bruce has been very good at and been very often saying consistently in different press conferences and such is he's used the term evaluation. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like, that doesn't happen by accident. Like he was going through a process last year where I think he was putting his best team on the pitch as he saw it week to week, but he also was looking at the fact that, it was still figuring things out. It was still, what is this team showing me in this year? What is it showing for me for the long term? What do we have to develop? Who's going to be part of this future? Who's not? And, last year I think was a moment of evaluating the roster and seeing where things are. And I have to imagine that this has been how he's gone about it, previously when he's been at other stops. Now, when you look at some of the talent that he's had at other places, like the LA Galaxy most specifically, that certainly helps. And suddenly talent was, coming out of the woodwork everywhere in New England. Carlos Gil is going to be a great player, but Bruce knew how to put him, at his best in that system. So I look at Bruce as just kind of figuring it out. Like he's earned the ability at this point of his career, whether it's his play in the collegiate system, whether it is his play, with the national team or coaching, I should say, rather than play. But the way he's gotten these teams to play, he's not on the hot seat. Even if the team has a bad bit of form, he's going to figure it out and they're going to have success. And I think that's, Bruce is in his mid-70s now. Yeah. He's been there, done that. Right. And I don't think much phases him. So he looks at this as like, okay, like we'll figure this out in year 1 and then we'll be able to get it going in year number 2. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening, because I don't think he ever felt like he was on the hot seat. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of coaches, they're in the hot seat from day number 1 because that's what we do now. I mean, whatever sport it is, particularly, soccer, hockey, and the NBA, it's like, if you're not winning, you're going to be gone very, very quickly. And sometimes when you are, I'm not quite sure what exactly happened in Miami, depending on who you ask. Because one side was like personal reasons. One side, the league's tweet was like parted ways. And Tom Bogert's tweet also had different verbiage as well. And I was like, what's going on here? What exactly happened? If it was my team, I don't know if you ever saw much 49ers clips from back in the day, but there's a famous clip of their owner, Eddie DeBartolo, after a playoff loss where he just grabs the mic and goes, "He's fired."
Yes,
like, there's so much like they mutually agreed to part ways. I'm like, really? Like, does it have to be so kind and gentle now? Like, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. But I have no idea what happened.
Was he really the head coach of that team when you think about it? Was he really in charge of that team?
For Miami?
Yeah.
I mean, I jokingly refer to them as the Miami Messies, which I think, but I mean, I'm sure he had, but to expand upon that, whenever there's trouble right now for any team, one of the first questions that I am asked is, do they have autonomy with the lineup? Because that's what modern sports are. Now it's not just the head coach, it's the GM, it's other people in the different departments. Everyone thinks, we saw it right here in Oakland. Essentially, it started with the Oakland Athletics, the Billy Beanification of what happened, of where everybody felt like, well, is this Art Howe's lineup, or is this Robert Guerin's lineup, or is this Bob Melvin's lineup? How much sway does Billy Bean have? And I think that's just because of the way metrics are applied now in all sports. I think that's what we all wonder. It's like, okay, so who is quote unquote calling the shots? And because that is such a consistent question now, like I just kind of have to shrug. I'm like, I I don't know. I mean, I like to assume so, that these guys should have the power, but I don't know. I mean, I assume Bruce Arena, because he is his own boss in the way that his structure is set up. He's the head coach and the sporting director, that, who else is going to be telling him what to do? But with a lot of other organizations where it doesn't have that type of a structure, I always wonder about how much autonomy any coach truly has these days.
Sure. Quick shout out, by the way, to the Oakland Bees at this point. I want to point that out now because they deserve some love, especially with the way the A's are now currently in Sacramento before Vegas. Looking forward to the rest of the season right now. Like I said, we're only probably about fifth of the way through the season at this point. A lot of season to go, but there you've put yourself into a really good position. What do you foresee going forward for the last 80% roughly?
I mean, that's the big question right now. I think that Bruce is also doing a mini evaluation right now of what goes up to the World Cup break. Mm-hmm. They are, I think they're going to be at game 15 or 17 when they get to that point. So, right around the halfway mark. And so I'm sure he's looking at depth, because right now that's the big question mark with the Quakes, is like when Timo's out, or when they've had Jamar Ricketts starting, or that they've had Jack Skahan starting. There's not a lot of offensive depth that's quote unquote proven. Now, this young kid, Nonzo, who's up this year, they officially signed just before the start of the season. He's got a big boot, but he's unproven at MLS. And so, Paul Marie also can come off the bench and score some goals, but he's mostly a wide player. He's not known for his penchant for scoring. And when he does score, he scores bombs. But, the emphasis that the Quakes need to figure out right now, in my opinion, is depth, because that's the clear, especially offensively, that's the clear question mark. And Bruce, one of the things that we saw him do last year was that he rotated the squad more heavily than the previous couple of head coaches, especially going into the busy schedule with the Open Cup and things of that nature. He had guys in and out of lineups. When the Quakes went to New England last year, I think Christian Espinosa had his Ironman streak broken because of that. And he said, well, he's been playing a lot. And he's like, he doesn't need to make this trip. We don't need him to go out there and play in every game. I'm paraphrasing there. I don't know if Bruce Arena actually said that out loud, but I think that was kind of the thought of like, okay, we can keep him out of the lineup because we need him fresh later in the season. So I think Bruce is doing a evaluation process through this first half before the World Cup break. And I'm sure from there, he'll figure out what exactly he wants to do in terms of where he needs to make his ads, in terms of how he needs to structure the rotation down the stretch. And that's the great thing about Bruce, is that, he's not indifferent, but he's just so casual about everything because he's been through all this before. There's no doubting that. He's just kind of like, we'll figure it out. And it's, he's been through it. That's the best way to put it. Nothing is shocking him about the way a season is going down, whether it's a regular season, whether it's interrupted by a World Cup, whether it's interrupted by international breaks, Open Cup runs, whatever. He's been through all this.
True.
Okay, this is a fan question, Ted.
I think at this time we can swing it over to the fan questions. Let's roll.
Yeah. So we kind of touched on this already, but I guess this kind of takes it a little bit more in depth. It says, what do you think has been the biggest benefit of an additional offseason under Bruce Arena in terms of tactics and training? I know you kind of already touched on that, but I guess maybe they want a little more elaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bruce also had to get to know the personalities that were here, which is something that I did not really elaborate on before, but he's not afraid to lean on the red ass type player. Like Preston Judd goes out there and gets in guys' faces. Benji Kikanovich can go out there and get in guys' faces. I think Daniel Muni, who's not, I think until like last year never got a yellow card, he's been more confident in going out there and being a little bit of a problem. Bo LaRue, he is not afraid to shoot from outside the box, and all of his goals at this point of his career have kind of been bombs from distance. And I think that in addition to maximizing guys' physical abilities and putting them in their best position to have success and, figuring out the defense to have more structure overall, I think that he has leaned on the identity of the team in terms of the personalities that are here. And that, yes, Timo Werner is a star, but Timo immediately came into the group and he's got a good sense of humor, and everybody was talking about how he was joking on day number one and ready to get going with everybody. I think that says that there's a long-term riff about Bruce being the king of vibes, which I always feel is a little selling him short on some of his tactical ability. But I think Bruce knows how to get guys to get along. Mm-hmm. And Benji Kikanovich told me that he thinks that right now this is the closest knit team that he's seen here in San Jose, and he's the third longest tenured member right now. The only guys that have been here longer are Jack Skahan, who started a year before him in 2020, and then Paul Marie in 2018. So Benji, gets along with the guys, and he knows how close this team is right now. And I think Bruce has fostered that overall mentality, and everybody's getting along and having fun. And, they fight like hell during practice. They get in each other's faces. They push it. They have to have that little bit of a red line in practice, but as soon as they step off, everybody's joking and laughing. There's no ego here right now. And I think there's ego in the sense that they want to prove themselves to the opposition, but they're very much fighting for each other right now. And I think that's a dynamic that Bruce Arena is very, very good at developing in San Jose. And another nameless player that said something to me that I thought was really, really interesting about Bruce compared to other coaches that they'd played with at different points of their career is they said that Bruce doesn't care about what you've done, doesn't care about what you're doing. He needs to know what you are right now. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the best way that I can try and kind of translate it, and talked about, Bruce rewarding the guys and their hard work is essentially what he was trying to go on and say. And Bruce rewarding, what guys are showing in practice, and not just putting out the same guy every time because, that's where the investment may have gone, or that's who the fans expect to see, is that Bruce is rewarding the effort. And I think that's what any player really wants to see right now, and wants to know that if they work hard, that will be rewarded, or that they will get their opportunities in some capacity. And that's got the team really locked in together. And, it's one of those, like I mentioned earlier, we are very much a metric-based sporting society right now in analytics, of which I love. They're very much a tool, but I also think that the coaches that are able to extract more from the emotional side of things to get guys to really fight for each other, that's a big, often overlooked aspect in today's modern sporting society.
Nice. Oh,
Yep.
right.
Agreed.
So, all right, my turn on this one. So, San Jose is currently sitting on $4.8 million in GAM and have 2 international spots. Do you have any thoughts on basically what the game plan is going to be with that?
It's really interesting. They have the money to spend. I think Bruce Arena does not want to disrupt any of the chemistry he's got going on right here. So I think that he's going to wait for the right guys. And he said it in a press conference, I think maybe after the win in Philadelphia, or I'm trying to remember. It was one of those where he essentially said, if we find guys that we think are going to help the team, that's where we'll go, which is a very innocuous answer.
Very generic response there, yeah.
Yeah, like you could apply that a million ways, of which, yeah, of course. But I think with Bruce, I think he means it, that they're not just going to go out and spend for the sake of spending. I think that he's going to, if he sees guys that can go out and help, that he can go out and get, that will help the Earthquakes, that's who he's going to go out and get. And my other joke is that because I am not the quietest person in the world, people always come to me for info, and I'm like, they usually don't tell the loudest man in the room all their deepest, darkest secrets. Whether people ask me stuff about the Sharks or whether it's about the Quakes or other stuff, I just kind of say they know how loud I am. They not that they expect me to go and blab, but maybe my whispering isn't as quiet as somebody else's. So they haven't told me all the deep, dark secrets as of yet.
So it's not going. Basically, you're not the vault then.
Not yet. Okay. Not yet.
All right. So
not yet.
Bill.
All right. So how's the Quakes going to continue to prioritize young talent? They're asking. They said we've seen Emmy and Oscar and others leave while Nico, Bo, Muni, and Reed have thrived. What goes into consideration when it comes to academy players?
I think sometimes people look at players and they see a homegrown definition and they think that means that there's an immediate development pathway. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. But I think sometimes people overvalue some of the young players, and they are a little bit miffed, like, oh, well, why didn't that guy get his chance? And, sometimes it's because the player didn't develop at the rate they were hoping to, or they just weren't the right fit for the right team at the right time. Out here in the Bay Area, one of the big discussion points of the last, multiple years is Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors, and the way that situation worked out to where it didn't. And I always say, you know what? We don't all have to have these hot takes. Like sometimes one team isn't the right fit for a player. And yes, you always want to extract maximum value or get the maximum trade value or whatever it is. But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes guys, to be their maximal selves, need to change scenery, need to become a different role in a different team. And that's just how it goes sometimes. But I do think that Bruce Arena is giving time to young guys. That's pretty much what he's done. We saw Jack Jasinski get his debut, the Quakes' highest draft pick in this last year, second rounder out of Princeton, fullback who was also, led the Ivy League in assists one season and has the ability to really contribute. And Bruce got him out there, we're, 7 games into the year, and he's already making his debut. And last year he leaned heavily on Floriani and Blow LaRue and Reed Roberts. And I think it's just a matter of the player being the right fit. And if that player who is young is the right fit, I think they're going to get their chance. I just think people are often impatient. And listen, when we see a young player come along, we always want them to develop and we want that homegrown story, but it's never that linear pathway. Like some people thought that, the Nico Chakiris pathway was being not properly taken advantage of, but I think more than anything, he had to develop. And now we see him that he has developed because, not everybody's ready at 16, but now that he's more of a man at 20, oh, look, suddenly he's having success. Suddenly he's that player that everyone thought they could be all along. And listen, I'm the same way. Whenever we sign a homegrown player, I'm like, I want that guy to get out there and stunt on the league. Like, I want them to be a stud. You're like, I want that pride. Like Oscar Verhoeven comes from Pleasant Hill. I grew up in Walnut Creek, and those two cities are right next to each other. And he would have gone to like a rival high school, the one I went to. And it's like, yeah, you want these guys. Like Chris Wondolowski wasn't a homegrown guy, but we graduated high school the same year, 2001. He was at De La Salle. I was at Northgate, again, two rival high schools. And I would get guys who would come up to me and be like, oh, yeah, I shut Wando down. And I'm like, okay, well, why aren't you the all-time goal-scoring leader? But, it's cool when you have those stories and those young guys who eventually blossom for the team. It's just not always it doesn't always happen in that linear pathway that everyone wants. And the one thing I always wonder about with Verhoeven, who's played wide his entire career and has been with the youth national teams, is that there was, I think Bruce, the first time he put him out there, put him at central mid last year, and Bruce said, oh, I see him as a center mid. So if I'm Oscar or his parents or his agent, maybe I'm saying, I don't know if I want my guy who's already in the national team system as a wide player switching at this point. And they said, let's try and find something else, of which, he's not stuck on the bench here in San Jose. And again, this is just me riffing. I have no idea if that's what actually happened. It was just kind of a query I've had, a wonder about the situation, where he's been able to go to San Diego and have success as a wide player. So, I know people want like a hot take with that, but it's just like, you got to wait sometimes with young players. Nobody wants to be patient, and sometimes it's not always the right fit.
Fair. Nice. Okay, I got one more in this case. I'm going to abbreviate it because there was a list of questions on this one. So I'm going to try and combine. I want to see if I can combine two of them into one, and then there's an extra added on this. Any update on the sale process of the team? How is that affecting the Santa Clara Fairgrounds? Is a two-part question on that one. And the other one is, do you want to see number 8 worn again, or should it be retired?
So the first part one is we really haven't heard anything on the sale process or anything with the with what's going on with the fairgrounds. I think that was kind of there's a longer story into how close the earthquakes were. I want to say around the 24 election season around here. And then that whole process kind of got bogged down. But I really haven't even asked, I haven't really thought about it that much. And then, with the sale process, I think it's kind of a situation where people are waiting to see what the true outcome of the World Cup is. Mm-hmm. I think they want to see and I know that might mean that some of these potential buyers might have to buy at a higher sale price if there's the World Cup boost that we all are expecting. But I mean, I think that's why, you're just not really hearing much. And I think that right now there have been some rumors, but nothing that seems imminent, nothing that seems like it's going to happen tomorrow. And now that I've said this out loud, I'm sure we'll click this off and a press release will come out, because that's how things work in my life. I'm good at being wrong. But if I just had to guess, a lot of these investors, a lot of these potential owners, they probably want to know what the real or the quote unquote, post World Cup valuation is, even if it's higher, because I think that'll give them a better idea of what the potential growth is going forward.
Makes sense. And how about number 8?
Oh, number 8. Boy, that'd be weird. I got to admit, it would be very, very weird seeing someone else wear number 8. But it's not really a thing in soccer to retire numbers. Like it's not as much of a thing. But because he is such a franchise icon, because he is from the Bay Area, because he is, the all-time goal scorer, because he is the ultimate icon, I would have a hard time seeing somebody else wear number 8. I don't know if Chris would care.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is so humble. Can I tell a quick story about Chris Wondolowski real quick?
Please.
This is one of my favorites. So he's one of those freak athletes. You give him a golf club, baseball bat, whatever. There's stories of him. I don't know if you remember the verbal history of Chris Wondolowski The Athletic put out, of where before a Raiders game, he was just crushing beers in the Oakland Coliseum parking lot, and then they brought him out onto the field pregame, and he was nailing like 55-yard field goals, but not just a couple beers, but like a lot of beer. So he's just walking out there, just a stud athlete. But there was like a Wednesday night softball league that my buddy plays in, and this was, I don't know, 2018, 2017, and he's playing seconds, and then he looks over at the shortstop who was walking over to talk to the guy at second. He's like, why is he going over to the walk to the guy? And the guy looks at him and goes, are you Chris Wondolowski? And he's like, yeah. He's like, and you're playing in the softball league in the middle of your season? He's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's like, all right. Just like, okay. Like, I think it was known to don't talk about this. Don't bring it up publicly. But it was like, yeah, he's just out there. He just, legged out a double. Just play, he's just one of those guys, not impressed with himself. He's like, are you Chris Wondolowski? Just like, yeah, not impressed in the slightest. Like, yeah, are you calling about my extended warranty? Like, what's
that? Oh, that's awesome. But okay, yeah, so yeah, in your case, you're of the camp it would be really awkward and maybe just let it go.
I don't know if it'd be awkward. Because it is so franchise defining at this point. Like, just his name above that 8 on so many different kits for so many big moments. It'd be weird seeing it, but again, he might not be the kind of guy. He might just say, yeah, go and let somebody else wear it. But he would be honored if they retired it, I'm sure, but I don't know that he's too specifically concerned about it.
But like you said, they don't really retire too often in this league. Not like other leagues.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't really in general in soccer.
Yeah.
So
I think about how many if they had to retire, the 10 for Argentina or something, like what would
right. Yeah, exactly.
It's not as much the culture. Whereas I feel that's specifically a North American traditionalist, baseball, basketball, football, hockey type of thing. But I don't know. That's the thing is when I had this discussion a while ago and we were kind of like, well, they don't really retire numbers, but I mean, it feels like they should, but I think that decision has to be made by Wando, honestly.
Yeah. Phil, you got anything else?
Yeah, I had one other question. So this is more of just like a historic San Jose Earthquakes question. I kind of want to argue my stance to the listener and kind of get your take on the whole thing. But Landon Donovan, widely credited with putting San Jose Earthquakes on the map. I would say, he made his impact. He's 19-year-old on loan from Bayern Leverkusen in 2001. You got to, they finished last in 2000. They're champions in 2001, champions again in 2003. Made instant impact in his first season in 2001. Scored a crucial goal in the final against LA Galaxy. The second title secured a second MLS Cup for them, scoring 2 goals in the final. Is he widely considered? I guess I don't want to say royalty. I guess royalty. Is he widely considered as basically putting them on the map? Because if you ask me, I really think that he kind of acted as the launching pad for this organization and himself as well.
Yeah, you go back to that point. The biggest soccer player in America was the San Jose Earthquake and helped them, put stars above the crest. Like that cannot be denied. Now there is a lot of people who are of the mindset that he was a legend, but because he also played for the Galaxy and such, that he's not singularly linked with the franchise the way that a Chris Wondolowski is.
Yeah.
But yeah, my respect for Landon is through the roof, and I think he should be treated as a franchise legend. It's just there's more friction with that storyline than there is with Chris Wondolowski, a Shea Salinas, a Joe Cannon, etc. Yeah. It's just not as clean, and that's not to imply that it's dirty, but like I said, there's friction with the storyline because of the Galaxy affiliation as well. That's not there with some of the other guys that are most linked with the franchise. But yeah, in my mind, he's easily a franchise legend, and also just in my brief experiences with him, just a really nice, really down to earth dude. And I really enjoy him on all the programs that he's on now and his takes. And I don't always agree with him, but I enjoy his takes. I want to hear what he has to say. And I think, Landon will always be a face and a name in Earthquakes community, in the U.S. soccer community, in Galaxy. I mean, that's who he is. He's a representative or an ambassador for the sport now. Now that he's post-playing career and, works in the capacity with which he does, he is, kind of like Brian Dunseth. It's not just limited to their role behind the microphone. They have that ambassador nature of what they're doing for the sport in this country and beyond.
And obviously, Chris Wondolowski, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was there from 2009 to 2021. Landon Donovan era was only 2001 to 2004. But what he was able to do in those years was, to me, is just unprecedented. And for a league that was fairly still young at that point in time, he really put them on the map, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. He was, he was the biggest story for that Earthquakes team. I mean, we knew about some of the other guys on the team, obviously in the Bay Area, but he was the star. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Nice. So
that was it.
Two easy, quick questions to wrap this up, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One, obviously we have the sprint season and then the changeover starting next year. How do you feel about that in general? Do you like it? Do you like the sprint season? Do you like the schedule change?
I love the schedule we have now, but I do understand why they're changing it, because you're going head to head with the NFL and college football, and it's putting a downer on the postseason, and it also has interruptions with the international stuff. So yeah, I understand exactly why they are changing it, but it is mostly the same. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's really just June and July where there is a lot of the change, where there's not going to be as many games. So, it is what it is. I think it's going to be rough for some of for the Bay Area. Great. It's not really a big deal. We get a little rain, some wind. But for Montreal, for Toronto, for some of the Eastern Seaboard, that's a different beast.
Yeah.
But for us in the Bay Area, no, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, in this case, like I said, with the sprint season also being that 14-game season, and the way I was explaining it feels like, remember when we had that, that COVID baseball season back in 2020, where you had 60 games and every game suddenly was so much more important. It feels the same kind of vibe this way. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just my opinion. But it feels
it'll be fun. I mean, I think getting the mini season to set up the next season, it will be fun. I think everybody's looking forward to that. But I like the season right now. But this is a cop out. But I'm like, you can play it anytime. They did all these games at 2 a.m. I'd be like, great, let's go, let's get it on. I am not. When you get to make a living off of being around a team and calling the action, it's like, I don't. I understand it doesn't fit everybody's schedule as well, and they've got more free time in the summer. But that's the people who want to go and watch are always going to be there. And I think that's, it's now incumbent upon MLS as a whole to encourage more fans to come and be there and watch. And hopefully by selling people on the postseason, which will not have the same friction from the NFL specifically, they'll be able to do so.
Sure.
Well, and Scott and I have talked about this numerous times. The main reason is to just align with all the international, transfers and for that standpoint, I think it's, the MLS is in the top 10 leagues in the world as of now. So, I mean, that, it really, I think it's a good thing. I mean, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about this numerous times, and I really believe that's the main thing is the whole transfer aligning with all the other, leagues in the world when it comes to the transfers. So
100%. I mean, it just makes the whole process of bringing in players, it makes it time out the same. It makes it easier. It makes it more, to overuse a term I've been using a lot in the last 5 minutes, you take away friction.
Sure.
And that's
right. Yep.
Friction is one of those things in life that when you take it away, suddenly everything gets easier.
Yeah, exactly.
You look at the growth of soccer as a whole. I just came from the press conference from Kevin Crowe, who's on the National Soccer Hall of Fame and just got the nomination for the announcement. And he was over the moon about how soccer has grown from this tiny little niche thing. In his case, the NASL, obviously, with San Diego, it's sort of your neck of the woods. and by that I mean I'm on the East Coast, so I can get away with saying that. But to see that to the expansion that we have now, it's something that I think this is just necessarily the next step involved. Although, again, and you know this well enough as well as I do, there's so much competition when it comes to all the other sports that are out there. You're in, you have the NFL over by you. Obviously, you got Major League Baseball, and the MLS Cup being during basically the UFL season, United Football League. And when you're already a month, 2 months into the Major League Baseball season where it loses a little bit of its excitement, it becomes more of just a daily activity. You're avoiding college basketball. You're avoiding so many things that I think that gives it the advantage of being a little more standalone, at least in this level of the game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're still going up against, the NBA and the Stanley Cup playoffs as well.
Right.
But it'll just because the NFL and college football are such giants, not having to compete with those, to me, that'll allow more people to see the great product that is Major League Soccer's postseason. And the MLS Cup playoffs are tremendous. We all know this, but it's going up against what is already a huge part of North American culture, that is the NFL and college football. And so that's quite a dragon to slay.
Sure. But yeah, I appreciate it. One important question: how can people get in touch with you, social media wise?
They want to get in touch with me at Ted Ramey Media on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. On Instagram, I'm Ted Ramey, and on YouTube, I'm Ted Ramey Sports. Because this was before everything had to be normalized, so it was a process that was built year over year. So those are the easiest ways to get in touch with me. You'll see, obviously there's a lot of soccer and hockey in what I do, but I fill in at the local flagship of the Giants as well on their radio broadcasts for sports talk and such. So I do talk Giants, I do talk Warriors, I talk 49ers. We got a lot of teams here, so there's always a lot to talk about.
And not to be confused with Ted Ramey of Spider-Man fame.
Correct.
Yeah.
People, they'd be like, it's not spelled the same. And I'm like, no, but like, I was like, it's taken long for people to get the pronunciation, even though he spells it differently. People now say my name correctly. They used to always add an S. It'd be Ramsey. I'd be like, there's no S there. Where are you getting the S from? But now they say it the right way. They're not used to it being spelled this way.
I get Atkins all the time. People call it Atkins. It's like, no, it's Aikens. There's no T in there. There's no T in there at all. So
yeah, I spelled your name wrong for a while too. You let me know every single time. Sorry about that. But I appreciate the time on that. My last thing, and by the way, I'm in favor of the NFL changing its playoff format, because your team got, lost out. My team lost out. Your team made out. So, But anyway.
You're a Pens fan, Bill?
I am. I actually work at the arena too. So,
nice.
So,
I hope they have a deep run. I love a lot of the players on that team. Even if they did beat the Sharks back in 2016, there's a lot of guys who, if you're a hockey fan, how can you not hope for another deep run?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, there are a lot of surprisingly how the youth has really taken over for them. And Dan Muse has just been a cerebral assassin when it comes to these lines. I mean, he has just done some great things,
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome.
But even the Sharks got a good future anyway. So, all right.
I hope so.
So, appreciate the time again, as always. Thank you again for coming back. My name is Scott Schertzen, Mr. Bill Akins, and one more time, voice of the San Jose Earthquakes, Mr. Ted Ramey. Thank you for the time on this. Good luck the rest of the season, but I don't think your team's going to need that much luck, because, by God, it is a fun team to watch, and there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, guys. Give me any time.
Take care.
Thanks.
Stay on.
Thanks, Ted.
So.